Petit. Zidane! Lift off for France! Aura himself. And Mbappé! Star after French star.
France is confident and how much they believe in themselves, and they're just focusing on themselves.
There was a time when saying the words France and World Cup favorite in the same sentence felt like a joke. Not because they lack talent. France has never lacked talent. This country produces footballers the way factories produce parts. Endless supply, world class at every position. And right now, in the summer of 2026, that talent is on full display. 14 goals in 5 matches. A captain who has just become the greatest knockout stage scorer in World Cup history. A Ballon d'Or winner playing like doubt never existed. A squad so deep that when Deschamps rotates 10 players, the result barely changes. This is a team that beat Sweden 3-0 and still didn't look like it had reached top gear. A team that dismantled Norway 4-1 without even needing its captain to score. A team that ground out an ugly 90-minute war against Paraguay and still found a way to win. And now Boston awaits. Thursday, July 9th. A World Cup quarterfinal against Morocco. A rematch of the 2022 semifinal that sent France to the final and ended a Moroccan dream. On paper, this looks like a team walking calmly toward another final. Maybe another trophy. But if you know anything about French football, you know paper has never been the problem. Because this is the same country, the same footballing culture, the same conveyor belt of talent that walked into 2002 as defending world champions and went home without scoring a single goal in the group stage. The same country that, 8 years later, watched its own players stage a mutiny on a team bus in South Africa, curtains pulled shut, training refused, a national embarrassment broadcast to the entire world. The same country that led Switzerland 3-1 in the 2020 European Championship with 10 minutes left, and somehow lost control of the game entirely. This is not ancient history. This is the same badge, the same shirt, the same footballing identity standing in Boston this week. And if you only judged France by their talent, you would expect exactly what happened in 2002, in 2010, in 2020. Brilliance on paper, chaos in reality. So here is the real question. Is what we're watching right now simply another gifted French generation, one bad night away from repeating history? Or is this finally the version of France that has learned from every collapse before it? To answer that, you have to look at exactly what this France squad is built from, because this is not simply 11 talented individuals wearing the same jersey. This is a machine designed to give opponents a different problem every single time they think they've solved one. Start with the obvious name. Kylian Mbappé is no longer just a fast teenager terrifying defenders. He is a captain carrying the weight of an entire footballing nation, and somehow that weight seems to have made him more dangerous, not less. Opponents know exactly what he can do. They still can't stop it. Mark him tightly and he drags 2 defenders out of position just by existing in space. Leave him an inch and he punishes it in seconds. But here's what actually terrifies opposition coaches heading into Boston. Mbappé is no longer the only problem. Ousmane Dembélé arrives at this tournament as the reigning Ballon d'Or winner. A player once written off as inconsistent and undisciplined, now transformed into one of the most complete wingers on the planet. He presses, he tracks back, he scores, he creates. And defenders who focus everything on stopping Mbappé often look up to find Dembélé has already punished them instead. Then there's Michael Olise, quietly becoming the heartbeat of this entire attack. He doesn't need the ball in dangerous areas to hurt you. He finds pockets between lines, slows the tempo down when France need control, and accelerates it the moment space opens. Behind him, Désiré Doué and Bradley Barcola offer completely different weapons. Doué's fearless dribbling, Barcola's pure straight-line speed. Meaning even when Deschamps changes personnel, the attacking threat never actually shrinks. It just changes shape. In midfield, Adrien Rabiot brings physicality and control, while younger players like Warren Zaïre-Emery and Manu Kone add energy that lets this team dominate the middle of the pitch without needing to overload it. And behind all of that stands a defense that has quietly become one of the most reliable in the tournament. William Saliba reading danger before it happens, Ibrahima Konate offering recovery pace and power, Theo Hernandez and Jules Koundé giving width and athleticism from deep. In goal, Mike Maignan doesn't just stop shots. He organizes, communicates, and launches attacks the moment he collects the ball. Put that all together, and you get a team that doesn't just have good players. It has answers. Attack them with pace. and their defense has recovery speed to match. Sit deep against them, and their midfield has the patience to wait you out. Try to double up on Mbappe, and Dembélé or Olise will make you pay somewhere else on the pitch. That is what makes this France squad so uncomfortable to prepare for. There is no single weakness to target, because whatever you take away, something else appears in its place. And that is exactly the version of France that walked past Sweden, past Norway, past a stubborn, physical Paraguay side that tried everything to slow them down and still couldn't stop them from finding a way to win. But here's where the story gets complicated. Because France has looked this good before. France has walked into major tournaments with squads exactly like this one, full of talent, full of depth, full of belief, and still found a way to lose to something other than the team standing across the pitch. Go back to 2002. Defending World Cup champions, defending European champions. A squad so talented that people weren't asking whether France would win the tournament, they were asking by how much. Then Zinedine Zidane went down injured in a meaningless warm-up match, and everything around that team simply came apart. No goals in the group stage. Eliminated before the tournament had truly begun. One of the most embarrassing collapses a defending champion has ever suffered. Then came 2010, and it wasn't even about football anymore. An argument in the dressing room turned into a full walkout. Players refused to train. Cameras captured the entire national team sitting on a bus with the curtains pulled shut, refusing to come out. The country that produced some of the greatest footballers on the planet had turned itself into a national embarrassment, and the scoreline barely mattered anymore. And then Euro 2020, a tournament where France, as reigning world champions, led Switzerland 3-1 with 10 minutes left on the clock. The match felt over, and somehow, in the space of 10 minutes, the entire structure collapsed. Switzerland scored twice, forced penalties, and eliminated the world champions in one of the greatest comebacks in European Championship history. 3 different tournaments. 3 completely different circumstances. But every single time, the pattern was the same. It was never a lack of talent that beat France. It was the moment they stopped controlling everything that talent brings with it. But history hasn't only punished France. It has also rewarded them, and it's worth remembering exactly how. In 1998, on home soil, Aimé Jacquet built a team where every single player understood his job before thinking about his own name on the back of the shirt, defended together, attacked together, suffered together, and that discipline gave Zinedine Zidane the freedom to become the difference in the final. 20 years later, in 2018, Didier Deschamps followed almost the same blueprint. Critics called his team boring, but Deschamps didn't care about entertaining anyone. He cared about control, and a squad filled with generational talent accepted defensive responsibility without complaint. France won that tournament not because they were the flashiest team in Russia, but because they were the hardest to break. So the real question isn't whether France has the talent to win this tournament. Nobody seriously doubts that anymore. The real question is which version of France shows up when things stop going according to plan. The version that unravels under pressure, or the version that tightens under it. And there are real reasons to believe this squad understands the difference. Look at how they handled Paraguay, a team that refused to let them play, that turned the match into a physical, frustrating battle designed specifically to provoke a reaction. France didn't panic. They didn't lose their discipline. They waited, stayed patient, and won an ugly game without losing themselves in the process. That is not something every French generation has been able to do. Which brings us back to Boston, and to Morocco. This is not a random draw. This is not an easy quarterfinal handed to France by fortune. This is the exact team that pushed them to their absolute limit in the 2022 semifinal, a Morocco side that has now become the first African nation in history to reach back-to-back World Cup quarterfinals, arriving in Boston off the back of a dominant 3-0 win over co-host Canada. This is not the underdog story from Qatar anymore. This is a team that believes it belongs on this stage, standing across from the exact opponent that ended its dream once before. And that is precisely the kind of moment that has decided France's fate for over 2 decades. Not the group stage, not the easy wins, the moment where an opponent that has already beaten you once looks you in the eye and dares you to prove that night wasn't a fluke. If this were 2002, you would already feel the cracks forming, a slow, quiet overconfidence creeping into a squad convinced its talent alone will be enough. If this were 2010, you would already be hearing whispers of tension, of egos colliding under pressure. If this were 2020, you would be waiting for the 10 minutes where control disappears and panic takes over. But watch this current squad, and none of that seems to be there. Not yet. What you see instead is a team that has already been tested this tournament by a stubborn Paraguay side, by the physical demands of a long campaign, by every trap that has broken French squads before them, and has answered every single test without losing its identity. So when the whistle blows in Boston on Thursday, this is what will actually be on the line. Not simply a place in the semifinal, not simply revenge or redemption or a rematch settling old business. What will actually be tested is the one question that has followed French football through every major tournament for the last 25 years. Can this generation control the one opponent it has never fully escaped? Because make no mistake, it was never really Morocco. It was never really Switzerland or Mexico or Senegal. Every collapse in French football history had the same opponent hiding underneath it, a version of France convinced that talent alone would always be enough. If this squad walks out of Boston having answered that question the right way, then the rest of the World Cup should be terrified, because a French team that has finally solved itself has no obvious weakness left to exploit. But if the ghosts of 2002, of 2010, of that collapse against Switzerland ever resurface, even for 10 minutes, even for one moment of overconfidence, then this tournament will simply become the newest chapter in the same old story. A brilliant, gifted, star-studded French generation, remembered not for what it achieved, but for what it let slip away. Thursday will tell us which story this is. And for the first time in a long time, it genuinely feels like the answer could go either way.